Hey y'all, I'm Ash Vampire, and you're watching Shoring Up. So, this week on Shoring Up, we are going to be covering an otaku darling, a cult classic, if you will. I am talking about Gakuen Utopia Manabi Straight, or as it is more colloquially referred to, the much shorter and simpler Manabi Straight. Manabi Straight is a show that is heavily couched in enjoyment through context. And what I mean by that is that Manabi Straight, in order to truly enjoy it, to get the maximum amount of entertainment, I suppose you could say, out of it, you are kind of expected to have watched a lot of this style of show. The cute girls doing cute things, the for girls shows, as it were. Because on its face, Manabi looks a lot like these, right? These shows typically have a lot of the same ideas, a lot of the same tropes, a lot of the same visual cues, a lot of the same narrative drivers. For example, we can just list off a couple of them. They're usually high school slice of life dramas. They usually have the similar cast of characters, both in archetypes and in similar character designs. They've got very similar narrative drivers to them, and they usually revolve around a central main character who is the new girl, as it were. So how does Manabi Straight require you to understand these tropes in order to maximize your enjoyment? Well, the key to this really comes down to an examination of agency in for girls shows. In most cases, the agency of these shows is based in the environment. The narratives of most of these focus around the MC being a girl who has something to accomplish, right? She has a goal that she's trying to see through to the end. She has development that she needs to become a more fully realized person, or maybe just simply she wants to be a better person overall. And the show is then about, and you get your enjoyment out of watching how she interacts with the other characters, the situations that she is put in to bring her along this narrative path. And that is the environment having agency. The main character is a reactionary character. She is someone who develops by virtue of playing off of how the environment presents problems to her. And this is a very tried and true formula, and not just in these shows. But Manabi Straight is nothing like that, and it relies entirely on its main character of Manabi. Manabi herself is this wall, this bastion of just raw drive and willpower. Manabi in this show has the agency. She rejects the idea that the environment has agency, and she pulls all of it onto herself. And the enjoyment of this show is watching how that pure, distilled, just absolute, almost childish in a way, willingness to push back against everything that is thrown up against you and insist on putting change into the world, of making your own voice heard, is where Manabi Straight is so enjoyable, and why context is so important, because I don't think that very many people just watching this out of the blue without the context of how all of the other for girls shows operates would necessarily catch on to how significantly different this entire structure narratively is from everything else. Because it is a show set during the future, not necessarily super far in the future, but far enough that high school is essentially dead. It is dying. There is no more need for it. Kids graduate from middle school and they just get temporary jobs or apprenticeships. They don't bother going to high school, really. High school is a fading idea. No one really cares about it anymore. And Manabi comes into the story determined that this idea, that this mentality of just allowing the world to dictate how you live, how you make decisions in your life, of allowing the world to make decisions for you, she is determined to not let this be, that she will be her own person, that she will make the world realize that she matters and that she can change things for the better. This is Manabi actively assuming the agency of taking it away from the environment and forcing the environment to respond to her rather than the other way around. We see this in everything from the character dynamics, which are the major drivers for these shows. How Manabi is the one who causes the situations to arise that allow the changes in character to happen, that allow development to take place. Manabi, in contrast to a lot of MCs, is a very static character. She doesn't really change. The interest of her as a character is watching how her attitude and her go-getter spunk is what causes the other characters to change. This is as personal as the girls that form the student council with her, all the way out to the teachers of the school and students in completely different schools. That is how powerful she is as a character, that she is able to thrust out her agency out into the world, and she follows it up and is so dedicated and determined that it actually does affect change. And this is such a different idea that, I mean, this mentality is very much a shonen idea in a lot of ways. Shonen main characters are very much about pushing back against the world, of being rebellious and independent. But Manabi Straight, I think, does it way better than most shonens because it's more civilized. It's I mean, to put it in a term that is kind of awkward, but I mean, she doesn't just push back against the system and expect it to just, do what she wants because she, because she puts herself out there. No, I mean, she still works within the systems in place. She's not a rebel. She's just someone who doesn't want, she's a person who doesn't let the world walk all over her. And I mean, I just personally, it's beautiful. It is just gorgeous. And it's very counterintuitive to Japanese culture, interestingly enough, because, in Japan, they have this saying, it is what it is. And that is just counter to literally everything in Manabi Straight. The entire theming of it is that you shouldn't just allow things to happen because they happen to be institutions or because that's just the way the world is. And it is not as though Manabi is just kind of allowed to have free reign, because this, there does have to be some conflict. But because of the agency swap in this show, you don't get that from Manabi making an incorrect decision, and having to suffer through consequences for that. The conflict in this show is actually from, in a kind of meta way, of the environment attempting to reestablish its agency, of attempting to force Manabi back into a passive role. And the conflict then is how she, once again is like, no, you can't do that to me. I am my own person. I matter. I matter in this world, and I am not going to just let things happen without any personal say in the matter. She is such a living character, such a vibrant, interesting person, and that really is the base appeal. And everything else about Manabi Straight that is interesting, that is enjoyable, really kind of revolves around Manabi in this way. So if we're going to talk about how the major enjoyment of this show is how everything ends up revolving around Manabi and kind of being twisted inward to her because she is the one holding the agency in this show rather than everything else out in the world around her, then you have to wonder, well, does that, change any of the more meta things like animation, music, and, those various other things that are typically more on a technical side? Yeah, absolutely. Those things, Manabi is such a powerful character that she breaks the fourth wall in a sense and completely causes everything about this show to twist in and serve her purposes. Particularly, what I noticed most obviously was the music. Typically for girls shows, the music is piano, very light melodic piano pieces, because the piano is a very calm instrument. It's very personal, very close, and something that we typically associate with very deep character moments within media, which really does suit for girls shows, at least most of them, because the narrative driver, again, for these types of shows is character dynamics, it's character interaction. So of course piano would be the best instrument to use as your backing track. But because in Manabi Straight, the character interactions are sourced through Manabi and not everything else, the music is completely changed. So what is the OST like with this knowledge? It's insane. It is this heavy, constant, pounding, absolutely thrumming and just ever constant DNB or drum and bass beat. It is fast, but not frenetic. It's steady. It is this ever moving onward feeling beat. It's the perfect sound for a character like Manabi. Again, she is this unstoppable wall of determination, and the music accompanies her perfectly well. It's amazing that her character is so essential to the show that even the outside elements, the more meta elements, the technical side of this show is even influenced by who she is as a character. The animation also kind of changes. And Manabi Straight is weirdly ambitious in a lot of its animation. There are weird esoteric shots where you've got a lot of weird stretch, a lot of color distortion, a lot of very odd choices in how they animate and choose to depict like flashbacks or, mental thoughts of some of the characters. And this, again, feels like it is in tribute to Manabi. This attempt to go out of your way to make things be the way you want them to be. I love it. It's so different. It's so unexpected of a show like this to really pull out all the stops in every department. And there's not much more to say about Manabi Straight. You could talk about the tangible details all you want, but at the end of the day, it really is still, narratively at least, a four-girl show. There is something to be accomplished. Graduation is the end goal. And it just so happens that the context of it is completely twisted around when Manabi is the one with the agency. I think I have said agency in this shoring up more than I have ever said in my entire life, but it really is the crux of why Manabi Straight is good, is that shift in agency. And again, it affects everything in this show, and I love it so much, and I do really encourage people to watch it for that. Though again, I do think that having watched a lot of other four girls shows will give you a lot more context and a lot more of an eye for where this shift occurs and where you can see the tiny ways that it affects exactly how the narrative is completely turned on its head. This is a bit of a shorter shoring up because there really isn't that much to say about Manabi Straight outside of its principal character of Manabi. Manabi Straight has plenty of okay jokes. It made me laugh a couple times. I think that the colors in it are definitely beautiful. They're striking and different. The character designs being a little bit more chibi takes a little bit of getting used to, but overall it is generally appealing. And it even earns bonus points for showing brief glimpses of these girls' lives after high school, which is a pretty rare occurrence in all reality. I don't think any of the other characters outside of Manabi really matter. Like, it really is all about her. And as long as you are able to become invested in this very different portrayal of a four-girl show main character, you'll be fine. You will love it, I think, as much as I do. And if you are into four-girl shows, the cute girls doing cute things shows, you owe it to yourself to watch Manabi Straight, if nothing more than for the perspective that it will give you. So with all of that said, and this being a very short shoring up, I give Manabi Straight an 8, and I will catch you on the flip side.